This is a state that in the 1980s had 5 of the top 10 metro regions in the entire country for median household income. So this idea, this vision of make America great again, I think was compelling to a lot of Michiganders who remember vividly when we were the most prosperous state in the country. And there is a longing to recapture that prosperity. And the question is how? So I think that is a reason why many Michiganders may have voted for Donald Trump, but also see the appeal in somebody like Alyssa Slotkin, somebody who is no BS. She will tell it to you straight. She brings a strong national security background with her work in the CIA. And I think a lot of Michiganders respect the fact that Alyssa served under both Presidents Bush and Obama. In a moment where we see nothing but division, people want to see their elected leaders work together. So my campaign is really centered on this idea of making a new American dream, acknowledging that we can't recreate the prosperity of our past by going backwards, and leaning into my own story. I'm a millennial who graduated right into the recession. I had no job prospects. I had no health insurance. I lived in the back of my car for a few nights, applied to 300 jobs, and I talked to Michiganders across this state who share that sentiment and frustration of having done everything right and still feeling like they're behind and they're not getting ahead and they don't have stability. So this is going to be about three things: success, safety, and sanity, and writing that new American dream together in a way that people can see themselves in, that isn't just about Donald Trump. It's not about, relitigating what he's doing or not doing. It's about what our future looks like.
Well, and we do want to get into the fact that you are a millennial and kind of the generational question now at play with the Democratic Party and what you might represent. But to touch back on your point around prosperity and what it will take to return it, for those who were gathered at the rally in Macomb County earlier this week, as Donald Trump talked about the Reagan Democrats and the auto workers who he thinks his policies will benefit, what is your message to that particular part of Michigan's constituency that you are seeking to represent, who feel like these policies actually would serve to benefit them?
There is a world where a thoughtful trade policy, thoughtful tariff policy could do things like bring a third or fourth shift back on some of our manufacturing facilities that have laid workers off or have idled. But what we're seeing now is the broad, expansive tariffs that went on after the announcement of the auto tariffs on everyday goods, from clothes to coffee to bananas to diapers, is going to devastate workers. So the approach that I have, that I hope Michiganders hear, is that we have to be thoughtful as we put policy forward and not have this approach that I think we've seen out of the Trump administration of ready, fire, aim, of let's just announce things, see how they go. And I think Michigan, really for the rest of the country, is a canary in the coal mine. We saw some strong jobs numbers come out this morning. However, Michigan has the second highest increase in unemployment in the entire country. Our unemployment rate is sitting right now around 5.5%. We've seen layoffs at Stellantis, at suppliers, at small business owners. And we see that ripple effect play out where, over in Long Beach, the longshoremen put out a really critical, strong letter about the impact that this is going to have to jobs in the economy if we don't see some measuring in the approach to tariff policy. So I am heartened by some of the news out of Beijing that you just mentioned, but we're going to have to see some stability and not the chaos that we've seen so far.
There's a question about whether to engage right now. James Carville would say Democrats should hibernate, give Trump the rope. Governor Gretchen Whitmer was criticized, as I'm sure you saw, by a lot of Democrats for coming to Washington to meet with President Trump. There was a bit of an awkward Oval Office appearance, but then days later we learned the Selfridge Air Base would get a new fighter wing, which she lobbied for. So is your governor actually the smartest one in the room?
I think what people want to see right now is that not only how to fight, but when to fight and when not to fight. Governor Whitmer is in one of the most difficult positions that I think any governor is in the country. We have seen a president who is willing to carry out vengeance and retribution on governors who dare to stand up to him. We saw this with Governor Mills and Trump rescinding funding from her state. So Governor Whitmer has a track record of standing up strong against Donald Trump, but at the end of the day, she has to protect and deliver for Michiganders. So she went out to that Oval Office meeting to advocate for a new mission at Selfridge Air Force Base in Macomb County, and we saw that come to light last week. And at the end of the day, what I'm hearing from Michiganders is that they are grateful that she understands when to work with him. I think when to work against him, maybe stand up to him. She's not compromising her values. She's still a strong advocate for reproductive rights, for women's rights, for voting rights, all of the things that we need to stand up for, but also knows that, Selfridge Air Force Base delivers $880 million of economic activity in Southeast Michigan and for our state. That is essential for the success of our state. And she knew the only way we were going to get that was by meeting him, by flattering him. And she did that and did it successfully.
As you talk about values here, Mallory, and the kind of the values that do unite the Democratic Party, I think we all also know that there are plenty of fissures within the party itself, especially in the aftermath of the 2024 election. And in the contested primary in which you are competing, including against the incumbent Congresswoman Haley Stevens for that Senate seat, does that risk bringing to light some of those deep fissures? And I wonder what part of the Democratic Party you see yourself representing here.
I don't think so. One of the things that I believe has been frustrating for voters across the political spectrum is feeling like the parties are making decisions for them, that voters do not have a choice as to which their preferred candidate is. I think that was some of the frustration that I heard on the ground in 2024 from the Democratic Party. I think Vice President Harris was put in a nearly impossible situation. I think that she did an incredible job with the 100 days or so that she had to mount a campaign. But I also heard from voters who said that they really wanted to have a primary, that if President Biden was not going to seek the reelection or was unable to, that voters should decide. So I'm excited about having a primary that is going to give Michiganders the option, the ability to look at multiple candidates, look at their platforms, look at their approach. My sense in this moment, to answer the second half of your question, is that this is going to be an election decided less by where a candidate falls in the political spectrum, whether they are progressive, moderate, or somewhere in between, and more about what their approach is. And that is where I think I fit. I have been a very pragmatic legislator here in the Michigan Senate. I came into office flipping a Republican district in 2018. My predecessor had won by 14 points. I beat him by 4. So we swung a district almost 20 points in the first cycle. And I did that by appealing to a lot of voters across Oakland County who saw me and they said, "You remind me a lot of my daughter who left and went to Chicago or New York or Denver. Why are you in Michigan? And what can we do to bring my kids back?" And that is a value that I think is universal, that Michigan should be a place of opportunity and family, and that this should be a place where people want to stay, invest, start a family, buy a house. And that is the approach that I'm taking into this election, that I feel like this is less about relitigating maybe a 2016 political fight where it's the Bernie wing versus the Hillary wing. And people are looking for somebody who stands up and communicates and believes that we have a future after the Trump presidency, knows how to articulate what that is, and shows that they're willing to fight for Michiganders.